All right, guys, back on Southeastern 16 with Max Barr, SEC basketball power rankings. And since it is Monday morning, Nicholas decides to always get the shot in at us for starting a couple minutes late. Nicholas, here's the deal, pal. All right, it's cold. There's been internet technical issues abound, so let's calm down here. All right, let's just calm down. You're going to have some issues, Max. Trust me, I'm going to have to reload all this other stuff. Just telling you. We're already off to a great start this morning. But it's power rankings time, and we appreciate you guys hopping in. So get ready. Another wild week of power rankings at Southeastern 16, Max.
Look at everybody ready to rock and roll on a Monday morning. Doesn't feel like a Monday morning. Doesn't feel like one. Feels like a power rankings morning. I'll tell you that much right now. And let's get started here, Blake. Why don't we? At number 16. At number 16. Are we ready? I believe we are. The Gamecocks of South Carolina. I don't think that is much surprise to anyone. South Carolina still winless, although they do have the 3-point, just barely lost to Auburn. And then right after that, the same exact score, 3-point loss to Vandy. They've been close. Not close enough, though, in this league, Blake. South Carolina here at the bottom.
Yeah, close doesn't cut it these days, does it? The SEC.
Nope.
But, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, they've not played awful. Sure, they're going to lose by 20 at Oklahoma and then lost by 20 to Alabama, 35 Mississippi State. But, like, in those couple games in the past week and a half, like, they didn't play bad against Auburn, didn't play bad against Vanderbilt. So, like, it's not like every game they're just getting blown out, right? They've had their opportunities, but we mentioned the schedule's kind of brutal, and I said it. Be nice to be able to get one of those upset wins this week if you're South Carolina. Home against Florida, home against Mississippi State. Otherwise, I mean, the schedule just does not let up, and that's the difference this year. There is no let up in the schedule. So when you fall behind like this, it's really hard to catch back up. So, yep.
2 big home games this week, Florida and Mississippi State. Gotta steal one of those if you want to make a little bit of noise here towards late January, early February. Moving on up. This is the lowest ranking this team has had all year for us, and it is the Hogs at 15. Arkansas still without a win. They're coming off of the back-to-back road games this past week, losing by 4 at LSU and then losing by 18 at Missouri. Guys, Arkansas, 15th. Man.
Well, people are asking why is Arkansas 15 and not 16. I mean, here's the deal. Here's why. They still hold a win against Michigan. That's the only reason. Like, let's just call it what it is, probably. I mean, that's why. Right, Max? I mean, am I wrong on that? Like, that's probably one of the reasons why. I mean, we're having to split hairs here when it comes to where we put them because it's either 15 or 16 right now, probably. And they have a good win, a month and some change ago. And that's about all we have to go on. So, yeah, that's kind of where we are. So it's wild that it's here, but this is where they are.
Good morning.
Yes, hello.
Am I the only one having StreamYard issues today?
Yes.
Good.
Okay,
Looks
great.
good.
It seems to be a pattern of school holidays and my internet sucking around here lately. But anyway, speaking of sucking,
Oh, nice.
yeah, I think if you're Arkansas at this point, who cares? Almost. I mean, 15, 16. Computers continue to like them a little more than the standings do.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add. I don't think we want to spend the majority of power rankings debating 15 and 16.
Arkansas has a better win than South Carolina. That's it. That's the only reason I ranked them at 15 and South Carolina at 16. Period.
They both have a 0 in the win column in SEC play.
Yeah,
there you go.
They're both winless. I mean, I don't like we're not going to sit here and debate this for an hour. Like it's just they're both in a not so great spot right now.
Got to win game.
And even South Carolina's got a win over Clemson and was that close to beating Vanderbilt on the road, and that close to beating Auburn at home. So, I mean, there's no
Sure.
bad teams in this. Well, there might be one bad team in this league, but anyway.
Got to win games in this league if you want to move up out of 15-16. One team that does have a win, LSU, up at 14. They've been slated at 15-16 for a while now. LSU grabs the Arkansas win at home and then is making A&M work for everything early in that game, but then late A&M pulls away just a little bit. LSU here at 14, 1-4 in the conference.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to say about LSU right now. I think they kind of are what we thought they'd be. They're struggling offensively, and that's the difference. So,
Not
Chris?
getting any easier with the Alabama teams ahead.
Yep, I was just you led me right into that, Chris. Next two games, Alabama and Auburn. Yikes. Tough two games upcoming for LSU. If they can steal one of those, holy smokes, that would be absolutely massive. But they're going to be double-digit underdogs in both. So LSU, tough road ahead, but did grab that one home win last week. Moving on up, Oklahoma is at number 13. Sooners finally get on the board in an SEC play with a 20-point win over South Carolina, 82-62. Before that, though, struggling 0-4 coming into that against Alabama, A&M, Georgia, and Texas. Oklahoma, 14-4, but 1-4 in the conference.
yeah, I mean, like we said, the problem for these teams that are down here is just they put themselves in this position where how you get out of this start is the big thing, right? And for Oklahoma, like, I mean, they're 1-4. They just beat South Carolina, so that's nice. But now, like, you go to Arkansas and go to Texas A&M, a desperate Arkansas team. Go play at A&M, who's got Wade Taylor back. You know, at least you get the week off. They're one of those teams that gets the week off, so they don't play till Saturday. But yeah, and you know, they've still got the games coming up the rest of the way against the Auburns and the Tennessees and the Floridas and the Kentuckys and so forth. So, yeah, I mean, that's like when you get these kind of losses early, that number starts adding up. So.
Yeah, I mean, look, they've still got neutral site wins over, Michigan, Arizona, Louisville. Still bank some stuff that could come in handy if they can win, say, 8 games in the league. You're out on them, huh?
Here's what I think, and this is going to apply to everybody in our ranking. I think at some point we can't weigh every single win the exact same, right? Like, we can't weigh what a team did way back when the same in our power rankings for January 20th. So I think, and that's how we're seeing like a team like Oklahoma slip down, right? It's because at some point, like, now what you're doing has to matter too. And I don't know, it's hard because we're going to have the same discussion about Louisville and some other teams when we get to a certain team here in a minute. But when they beat that team, you see what I'm saying? Like, are they what they are now? Or were they just a kind of completely different team? So, I don't know. Oklahoma's non-conference schedule left a bit to be desired, as everyone talked about. And now, since they've gotten off to a slow start, it just kind of stands out a bit more, and that's why they're sliding down here.
Well, see, I think all but maybe 4 or 5 teams go through spells of something at some point in the year. And I get what you're saying. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. We've got almost 2 months of the regular season left. But I mean, you've still got you banked some wins. You've got a future NBA first rounder. I'm just not out.
What does that have to do with anything?
Yet. Well, it points to talent. It points to ability. As the wins that they banked do. No, look, I had Oklahoma at 13 too. I'm just pointing out that there's some good stuff there.
Yeah.
I mean, UConn, what was it, 2 years ago, lost 6 out of 8 games at one point, won the national title. I think I'm not too quick to give up on teams. And they banked some things of note, in my opinion.
The other thing about Oklahoma is they only lost to A&M by 2 and lost to Texas by 4. Both those were at home. You got to win those games. You definitely have to win them. But if a few possessions just go Oklahoma's ways, maybe one more 3 drops, we probably have them a bit higher than 13. But they're at 13 because they lost to a team at home that is at 12, and that is the Longhorns of Texas. Texas is coming off of the 24-point beatdown on the road at Florida, coming off of the road win at Oklahoma on Wednesday. Before that, the 4-point loss to Tennessee, 5-point loss to Auburn, and 20-point loss to A&M. Texas, a little bit inconsistent. Don't know what you're going to get night to night. Plenty talented. Pretty balanced offensively and defensively. They're 47th in KenPom in offense, 48th in defense, probably the most balanced team in the league. However, just they can't rack up any of these big wins. They had Auburn, Tennessee, and Florida and missed all three of them, guys.
Yeah, we said it for them. I mean, hey, at least we said the potential of them being 0-5. At least they're 1-4 right now. So, by getting that Oklahoma win, and it was a tough spot playing Florida on the road after the Gators were a little bit angry after that Missouri game. Speaking of Missouri, that's who Texas gets next. And we said they got to win. I mean, look, in a perfect scenario, you're winning both these home games this week against Missouri and Texas A&M, but they got to win at least one of them. Like, there's no question. And then, of course, it's back-to-back road games, and they kind of have that stretch where they go, like, back-to-back home, back-to-back road, back-to-back home, like, there's one in the middle there somewhere. But that's kind of the way their schedule sets up. So, yeah, I mean, they've got to win home games because right now in SEC play, you're 0-2 at home, and so you need to probably make up for that if they're going to be closer to – I mean, they're on the bubble right now, but if they're going to be closer to being like an NCAA tournament lock-type team, winning both these games this week would go a long way towards that.
Best win is at Oklahoma. Next best win is what? St. Joe's? And I don't just rank these by wins, but that underscores the point that they've got to beat some teams.
Got to rack up some wins. This week, this might be the biggest week of the season for Texas basketball right here. Home against Mizzou, home against A&M. That would immediately be the two best wins of their season. Huge week. Wow, huge week coming up here for Texas. Okay, speaking of huge weeks, Vanderbilt up at 11. Vandy is soaring through the rankings, coming off 2 straight wins, beating South Carolina at home and then knocking off the Vols at home. Big time week for Vandy, guys, up at 11. I believe this is the highest ranking of the year for the Commodores.
I think so. Yeah, I feel like we had them somewhere around here. What was it? Probably before SEC play started. Maybe we ranked them a little higher after that LSU win. I can't remember, but we had to be 11 or 12, right? So, yeah, I mean, what can you say? They're doing the formula. They're winning at home, and that's what we said you got to do. And we talked about how this was the start of their really tough stretch. Was home against Tennessee because then they got to go to Alabama tomorrow night. Yeah, like it's just a brutal grind of a schedule for them, and it doesn't look any easier now that you're looking at like Texas getting a little momentum. Missouri's obviously on the rise, same with Ole Miss and such. So that schedule, that if we'd have pointed it out a month ago, we'd been like, oh, this is kind of the tough part of their schedule. Well, it extends a little bit even further based on how much better some of these other teams are in the middle there. So, yeah, that was a huge win. They're working, they're doing their thing. They're not turning the ball over. They're forcing turnovers, and they're a really good offensive team, I think, whenever they get going. And obviously Jalen Carey's been a big difference maker. So, yep, the Commodores feeling good about their NCAA tournament chances right now. Just have to withstand the grind of this schedule over the next month.
Over under on how many wins they need from here on to get into the NCAA tournament.
They got to go 8-10.
I haven't broken it down.
So whatever
that means is. 5 more wins.
Yeah, it depends who it comes against.
What happens? Well, right. I mean, you could give them one against Arkansas at home, March the 4th. Not sure that's going to be meaningful the way Arkansas is trending. Texas at home, February 8th. I don't think Texas is an NCAA tournament team today. Talent-wise, could absolutely get there. So that means you've got to beat 3 teams of a bigger consequence. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, 6, I think, gets them in for sure. That's 9-9 in the league. Not that they really look at league records, but again, the out of conference. I don't think they beat anyone out of conference that's going to make the NCAA tournament, depending on what Nevada and maybe TCU do. No. What is it? It's kind of an interesting conversation.
I think if they get an 8-10, they're in.
Got a lot of opportunity.
The non-conference strength of schedule is poor. So they're not one
awful.
of those teams who are going to get in at 7-11. I think they got to get to 8-10. So
moving into the top 10 now. Moving into the top 10, we have got the Dogs, Georgia, at number 10. They are coming off of 2 losses, but if you watched that game against Auburn, you're coming away liking what you're seeing a little bit here from Georgia, only losing by 2 at home against Auburn. I know no Janai Broom, excuse me, but that could have been a season-changing win had Georgia made a few more free throws or whatnot. But Georgia now wins over Kentucky, wins over Oklahoma, losses to Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Auburn. You're not really going to be shameful of losing any of those 3 teams. Georgia here at number 10.
well, hold on. Before we talk about Georgia, as Brian notes here, we got to go to the monitor. So we'd like to review the rankings here. Can we please bring up the individual staff rankings? Yeah, we're never going to do that. And we're going to go to the monitor, Max. We're going to do the math again, at least 5 more times in the next 0.8 seconds of this power rankings here.
Gross.
Of course, this could have applied to multiple games in the SEC this past weekend, as we know. As bad as people thought the monitor stuff was in Georgia Auburn, I thought it was worse in Ole Miss Mississippi State. But
Oh my goodness!
All right, so the Bulldogs. Yeah, I mean it's one of those things with Georgia where it's like, if you look at what they've done the past couple weeks, there's nothing to really be that upset about, right? I mean, they got the back-to-back wins against Kentucky and Oklahoma at home. They lost by 18 at Tennessee, which a lot of people I think are going to lose by 18 at Tennessee this year. And then, they lose a game to Auburn by 2. And so I think, though, this is that point, and this is what I said last week. I feel like this is, for them, a crucial part of their schedule because now they're 2-3 in SEC play. This week, what happens, right? They go to Arkansas and Florida, 2 very tricky road games. And then they're at Alabama the following Saturday. So, like we said, don't let 2 losses turn into 3 and so forth. But the way their schedule sets up, you play a desperate Arkansas team on Wednesday at Florida, who look pretty good despite, a blip against Missouri. Yeah, so this is kind of this may be kind of like a defining stretch for Georgia in their season because you got South Carolina at home sandwiched in between those games, and then you got LSU at home after that. So I still think it's like the same thing. If you're an SEC team right now, you're just trying to get to a magic number. However you get there, I think you're going to be fine as long as you just get to that magic number. Some teams it may be only 7. I think some teams it needs to be 8. And so how do you get those numbers? Like Georgia's still got plenty of opportunities to get there. And, they're 26th in the net right now. I mean, they're still playing with house money at this point in the season. So,
does anybody have an easier schedule the rest of the way than Georgia? Because you've got South Carolina twice, LSU at home, Arkansas on the road, Texas on the road. And like none of those are easy, but it's all relative. Like I don't see – you're done with Tennessee, you're done with Kentucky, you're done with Ole Miss, you got 1 more against Auburn. You do have Florida twice.
I mean, without looking at the other schedules, it's hard to say, but
yeah,
I'd say yes if Arkansas was at home, if even South Carolina on the road. Georgia may be favored by a point or 2 in that game, right? So I don't know. I mean, yeah, because you got Auburn again on the road, the Texas road game. That's another one. If that one was at home, I'd say maybe. But that's on the road. That's tough. And we've said, look how Georgia's played on the road. They have not played well on the road so far. So you may be right, Chris, but without looking at the other schedules, it's hard to say.
I want to see what BPI's got. BPI does have Georgia with the 21st toughest remaining strength of schedule, which is also 16th in the league.
Sure. Yeah.
It's going to be no question what the formula is for Georgia through 5 SEC games now in the conference. They rank 1st in conference-only defense, 15th in conference-only offense. No question what Dogs are going to lean into. They're going to win games with defense. Moving on up. Now, this is where it starts to get real tight. Real tight. Number 9. Ole Miss.
I vehemently disagree.
I think we need a monitor review on this one.
I vehemently disagree with Ole Miss at 9. I think this is way too low.
Hold on. This was a tie. This vote, number 9 and number 8 were tied, and 8 had a tiebreaker. They had the highest vote. So just let the record show. This was a tie between 9 and 8. Ole Miss here at number 9. Now, let it be known, these are all projected top 6 seeds. So we are talking top 30 teams from here on out. This is whatever the discrepancy from rank to rank. It's going to be about 3 teams nationally, 4 teams nationally. I mean, we're pretty much everyone from here on out on a neutral floor would be a spread within a possession. So that's the floor. Blake, take it where you want.
All right. So again, nature happiness knows, as me being called the resident Ole Miss hater here, which I am no longer the case here. I think this is way too low. I just don't agree with this. I will be honest with you. I think there is a case to be made that even though Ole Miss lost at Mississippi State, I still feel better about Ole Miss moving forward than maybe Mississippi State.
Yeah,
they lost by 2 or whatever the final ended up being on the road in overtime.
I disagree with that.
I don't, because right now the way they're playing, now you could look at the overall body of work and be like, okay, they're very similar, right? But I think with the way the two teams are playing right now, let's not forget, okay, this is where sometimes I think the overreaction to Saturday is way too big. They went and won by 10 at Alabama on Tuesday. 10 points. They won by double digits at Alabama. So where
did you rank them? Where did you rank Ole Miss?
Honestly, I think I ranked them up. I was trying to move them up in our chat after we sent the rankings in once I know the composite. But that's all I'm saying. I think Ole Miss there's another team we're going to talk about, A&M, all right? I'm just going to go ahead and tell you right now. I do not think Ole Miss should be behind Texas A&M.
Why don't we loop them in? A&M is 8th, and Ole Miss is 9th. That's the tiebreaker.
And who's 7? Let's just go ahead and put this in here too, because I think these 3 teams are all in the same discussion, all right? 7 is Mississippi State, right? Okay.
Well, yeah.
So here's what we had to look at here, all right? Let's say,
like, you had Ole Miss at 8. You're acting like Ole Miss at.
I had them ahead of A&M though. I think this is where I vehemently disagree. No, but here's my point.
Ole Miss at 8.
Here's my point. If Mississippi State are we saying the resumes with Mississippi State and Ole Miss are that close to where if Mississippi State wins that game, that's why they moved up ahead of them, right? Is that our thought pattern this week on those two? It's just that one game, correct?
Well, Ole Miss did not lead for a single second of the entire game. They were down by like 15 the entire first half, and then Padula comes out and is making step-back threes. Morell's making pull-ups at the top of the key. I mean, Mississippi State controlled the entire first 30 minutes of that thing. So,
but I think the Ole Miss win at Alabama, to me, is one of those I think you guys forgot some of that. I mean, that's a significant win. It is. I mean, that's my problem with this whole thing. So I'm just curious. That's what I'm asking you. Let's say we redo the ranking, right? And let's say that is the reason you ranked Mississippi State. If we ranked them ahead of Ole Miss, is it simply flip if Ole Miss wins that game? Is it that simple? I'm just asking. I'm asking the question.
I think it is.
I think so. Right?
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
If you take BPI, if you take all the predictives out there, the difference between A&M, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss on a neutral floor is 0.2 of a point. Okay, if we had put Ole Miss ahead of Mississippi State, what would have happened? Everybody would have screamed, "Hey, wait a minute! How could you do that?" They're
going to be screaming about another ranking here in a minute because it's the same scenario, and that's what I'm saying. We're a little hypocritical here because we're going to have the same scenario in just a minute, where there is going to be a team that lost to another team ahead. So
well, yes,
that's all.
you do get some of that. It is unavoidable, but I'm saying sometimes it is circumstances. It's who you're grouped with, and if you're grouped with teams that are just you tie knots trying to figure it out, you have to make a decision on something. Now, here's the other thing, and you guys haven't brought it up yet. A&M's been playing without its best player, and he's now back.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, that factored in a little bit too. You can't just say, well, losing Wade Taylor, that means nothing. We can't hype Wade Taylor up as this All-American level player and then say, well, his absence means nothing when they lose games without him, and then throw him back into the lineup. And to me, that was a tie break for me too. Do I have any idea who's better between these three teams? No clue.
I think all three of these teams, Ole Miss, A&M, and Mississippi State, I think they're all three going to land at, I bet one of them's a 4, one of them's a 5, and one of them's a 6 when it comes to just shake your dice, throw them any way you want. I don't really think it's going to matter. But those are three teams that I feel like are going to be very, very popular 4, 5, 6 Elite 8 run teams, all three of these guys, because they're all very similar in the style they play, all very similar. We do have A&M at Ole Miss on Wednesday to kind of settle the score. So that'll be a circle that game here based on these rankings. But honestly, I do think you can, at 7, we have Mississippi State. There's an argument for Ole Miss at 7. And Chris, you just made the argument for A&M at 7. And we have Mississippi State here. I think there's an argument for all three of them.
It doesn't matter. We had to rank them somewhere. There's no difference between these three teams.
Yeah.
I disagree. All right.
Okay.
Moving on.
Unan,
I think
number
there's a
6.
slight
Okay,
difference,
now, wait. You thought we were here just having discussions. Let's get into some discussion now.
Hold on. Before we get into that, we got to get back to the people for a second. All right.
Okay.
So let's quickly bring up Super Chats. Zach, $2 Super Chat continues. Another day, another dollar for Zach. The streak continues for him.
The streak continues.
Just a warrior for Zach here. T-Rob says he does not envy us at all with these power rankings. Yeah, what do you know? And speaking of that, Nicholas brings up, I think, a great point. I like how the chat bullies the hosts more than each other, unlike any other podcast in the world. Yes, you guys have a lot of fun with that. So we appreciate your love and or hate for us because that certainly continues to be a theme for sure,
great.
Especially on Mondays at 9 a.m. Yes, Gene, it's 11 degrees right now in Nashville. It is as cold as I think it's ever been out here, but we continue on. All right, so Kevin gave us the $49.99 super chat. Kevin continues his streak as well here at super chats. He blames Chris for the Vols' loss on Saturday. Chris and Chaslin here. So Blake has gifted out 20 memberships. Oh yeah, and then he gifted out 10 more. So 30 gifted out memberships. You guys 30. Out there,
very kind.
So you can come yell at us in the members only content too now. Zach, $5 super chat. If Mississippi State made it closer against Auburn, I would agree with that. Bama win for Ole Miss puts them over A&M. That would be one of my arguments. But, yes, it is close between these teams. I would have A&M lower than those two teams, just to be honest with you. I tried after the vote came in to move Ole Miss up, but the chat did not allow it. They vetoed my ability once I saw the composite rankings to move Ole Miss up. These two guys vetoed that move. So I was trying to filibuster here to get them to move up, but Judge Max will not allow that. So
think about that, though.
Right.
Alabama goes in, Ole Miss goes and wins at Alabama, which almost no one ever does, and they drop in the power rankings.
Well, this is why I tried to give you my stance in the group chat. Whenever the composite, Max sent the composite, I said, can we move them up? Because I think they're way too low. But
either way, say we had them up at 7. Say we had Ole Miss up at 7 here.
Mm-hmm.
You could still say that same sentence. They just went into Alabama and won by 10, and we've got them sitting back here at 7, middle of the pack. So you could say the same thing.
I do think if you played a bunch of games between the teams on a neutral floor right now, I feel like I trust Ole Miss a little bit more. But again, A&M's been playing without Taylor. State's been playing without Clary, who I think will make a difference when he comes back. Again, who cares? It's fun. I think the value is more in the discussion than it is in the number next to the name. Hopefully people see it that way. Probably not, but anyway.
That's okay.
I mean,
We have
Blake
fun
and I
here.
I've already said bracket comes out, the Elite Eight. The first thing I'm writing down is Ole Miss's name in the Elite Eight. It's just
Yeah.
it's set in stone. It's set in
We
stone.
agreed to that on Saturday.
is-
Max and I were in full agreement. We don't care what the bracket looks like. We got Ole Miss in the Elite Eight. We're calling it right now. Okay, so
Lock it
there
in.
you go.
Yep.
Lock it in.
Okay. Moving on up here. Number
Oh, boy.
6. I believe this is a season low.
Turn this
for
over to Chris.
Vols at number 6.
Yeah, I think that's too low.
Explain. Just give your reasoning.
For conversation.
Because I don't if we want to clip a 2 or 3 game sample stretch from everybody's season, you can justify just about anything, except for Auburn. I think the last thing we see is, and look, if Tennessee had hit one more free throw, sent that into overtime, and wins, where do we have the Vols today? And I get we just argued that for Ole Miss and Mississippi State. So I'm not trying to speak out of both sides of my mouth. I'm just saying I think Tennessee gave up 74 points to Vanderbilt Saturday. That's the most Tennessee had given up all year. Do you know how hard that is to do in this era of college basketball? I don't know. I just think Tennessee is an easy target sometimes because of the offense and the way it goes cold a couple times a year. And because it's done that in the past, we go, oh, here we go again. This is the team we knew it was. Blah, blah, blah. We hear that all the time. Like every time Tennessee, the offense goes into the deep freeze for 10 minutes of a game, everybody freaks out. And that overrides everybody else's judgment about that team. I look at what they've done year after year. I don't think there's a coach in the conference that over the last 7 or 8 years has been more consistent than Rick Barnes. Now, I think Rick Barnes screwed up Saturday. I think sitting Zakai Ziegler with 2 fouls for the latter part of the first half might have flipped that game in Vanderbilt's favor. I'm not a big sit a guy with 2 fouls, especially when that guy is Zakai Ziegler. I just think, okay, Tennessee's worst attributes have been on display of late. And I get it. I get why people have hit the panic button a little bit. I just think, look, 2 weeks ago they were number 1 in the country and people were yelling at us for having Auburn number 1. They've gone into a little bit of a slump, which teams tend to do. I still think what Tennessee did before that is also very relevant.
Okay.
Is this
I just think
we bring up Bart Torvik?
Yeah, I was about to throw it to
think
Max. Max, what does Bart Torvik have to say about where Tennessee is currently trending in the SEC? Because I like to really turn to my friend Bart in these kind of arguments.
Wow. It's funny you asked me. I might
You know how
have
much
said.
Blake likes his analytics, Max Barr.
I love Bart Torvik. I call Bart every day.
buddy.
Every day, Bart and I are on the phone for at least an hour. So,
Well, Bart Torvik, one of the reasons why it's a really cool analytics site is because you can really easily filter the time for where you want the data to pull from. So when you filter it for just January 4th till now, it's a 5-game sample size. It's SEC play, right? We're just doing SEC play. Very small sample size. So it's not all the way, don't just go and lock it in. But when you filter it for just SEC play, Tennessee is 8th in the conference and they're 29th in the nation. So when you're looking at offensive and defensive efficiency, they've had the 63rd offense in the nation and the 33rd defense. I mean, we were talking a few weeks ago, Chaz Lanier versus Dalton Connect. Who's better, Chaz Lanier or Dalton Connect? I think we're seeing now that we've gotten into SEC play that Dalton Connect's height and kind of his NBA build, just being a little bit taller, being a little bit more of a true wing, we're seeing Lanier step back efficiency-wise. I mean, Lanier was he was 5th in the nation in the analytics, the national ranks. He's nowhere to be found now. So he's taken a big step back. I think you can't lose by 30, even though it's to Florida. You can't lose by 30 and then go on the road and lose to Vandy and still be ranked in the top 5 of this league. You just can't do it.
What was the date on the thing that you just read off where they were? How many
Just
games
SEC
is that
play.
span?
It's since
They're 33rd nationally in defense.
Yeah, they've not been good.
See,
Yeah,
that
they've not been as good.
that might be a little problematic.
Yeah,
I mean, I knew
Yeah.
the offensive numbers wouldn't be great just based on the Florida game, but I didn't know the defense had slipped to that degree.
I don't like the way they're playing. Like I can make it pretty simple for me. Like I don't like the way they're playing right now. As Max said, like it's just they went on the road and lost by 30. And we can say, well, that's one game, right? Well, we're about to talk about a team here in a second who didn't go on the road and lose by 30. I know the full body of work has to matter, but like still, right? And so, like again, like I think it's still all right with Tennessee. Yes, the computers love them. Like they absolutely love them. But I don't know. I mean, we're still like when we talk about Tennessee's best wins on the season, right? And again, here's what's about to happen. I mean, before I go into that part, they play 4 of their next 5 games at home. So guess what's about to happen for Tennessee? If the trend continues, and I'm going to pull up this one here, as Matt says, until Tennessee loses at home, he has faith.
Yeah.
Until Tennessee loses at home, like, let's not completely just jump off the Tennessee bandwagon here, all right? So even though they slide down this week in our composite, which I had a feeling they would, just based on the loss to Vanderbilt, and as we said, if you factor in the 30-point loss at Florida, but they're about to probably, if they win all these home games for their next 5, that would include Mississippi State, Kentucky, Florida, Missouri. Guess where Tennessee's going to be ranked after that? Probably at like 2 again, right? So, I mean, it's just, this is how it works. So when you are kind of in this scenario and just kind of the way they play, I think is something right now for me that I don't love the way they're playing. But if they start winning these games, and remember, they're at Auburn on Saturday, sandwiched in between those 4 out of 5 at home. I mean, there's plenty of opportunity for Tennessee here.
And then what happens after that? They go 4 or 5 on the road.
Yeah, so they have
Blake,
one of those
have you
kind
ever-
of wow.
That's
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah.
That's weird.
I don't ever recall that happening in the league. Not that I've like followed it, but Blake, you probably pay attention to that more than I do.
Here's the thing. When you have 16 teams now, when you add 2 more teams, like you're going to have more of those kind of quirky schedule things. And like we've seen that with some of these this year. And especially remember too, like you're building in the week off where it used to have the SEC Big 12 Challenge or whatever. You have that week off built in. So like it's a lot tougher, I think. And you're like, okay, it's just math. You're adding 2 teams. But like I think it is a lot more difficult to try to avoid some of those just weird scheduling things. And Tennessee just happened to be one of those. So, yeah. So, I mean, again, like, they're a top 3 seed in the tournament right now.
Yeah.
But
all right, we were
just in our rankings, they're not just because for obvious reasons, I think. So.
We ready to move in the top 5?
Here we go.
Top 5. Top 5. We have Missouri.
Wow.
Missouri at number 5. Could have been higher. Coming off of
What?
No, listen, we're back to the group chat here. I wasn't the only one trying to filibuster for a certain team in the group chat after the composite ranking came out. But Chris and Max, I like what they do. They don't let me play my games here. They hold us to the honor system when it comes to the composite ranking. But there was someone else who was trying to filibuster for a certain team. So
Mizzou, LSU, Vandy, Florida, Arkansas, 4 in a row after they dropped the road game at Auburn, to open SEC play. 4 in a row, road win at Florida, crush the Hogs at home. If you look, so I just brought up that Bart Torvik filtered from January 4th. Chris, guess where Missouri is, or do you remember?
I don't remember.
Missouri is 7th in the nation since January 4th.
Goodness.
Second in the SEC. They have been unstoppable. Mizzou at number 5, Blake.
did you say 7th in the nation
Yes.
since January? Oh my gosh! Wow.
Well,
I
look
did
what
not
they've
realize
done.
it was
Hey,
that high.
January 4th.
No, I know, and that's the point, right? That's why they're ranked this high. Go ahead, Chris.
Is
Add
that
your
is
thoughts
that
and then I'm gonna
after the
continue.
Auburn game or including
Nope.
the Auburn game?
Including.
Yeah.
Okay, go back to December the 8th when they beat Kansas, just for curiosity,
All right.
and run it for
That's
that.
a good point. Yeah, I'm curious where they would be adding that into.
9th.
Wow. So for the past month and a half, they've been one of the top 10 teams in the country.
And if you want to say like, oh, analytics this, analytics that, bump it out to 20. You know, give it a 11 spot buffer. They've been top 20 for the past month and a half, 100%.
I'm looking at when does Ken Palm take out all the preseason stuff?
No clue.
Because
I mean,
well,
in all honesty, like it may be next season. Like I don't know.
here's my point. I don't understand how. Well, I think I do understand. I know some of that is baked in up to a certain point. I want to say it starts getting weeded out maybe sometime in January, but they were 52 in Ken Palm to start the season, 64 heading into Mississippi Valley State on November 14th. And I'm looking at some of these scores, and I don't really quite understand how Missouri was as low as it was, unless it was just being weighted down by
They
the
are.
preseason, which would include last season.
Yes, which is why look, we have our fun with the computers and all this stuff. Everybody knows, like I have fun poking back at the computers, but that is one of the reasons why, like, not joking. I just think it's, if we just did not take that into account, where would they be right now? Right? I mean,
Yeah.
and I think that's unfair because every single season is different. And especially you can say that in this era, right? How could you possibly, for any team, factor in last season if you're doing these computer rankings when there are gazillion transfers, so many different things? And so, I don't know. And look, people point out in the chat too, keep in mind with Missouri, that loss in there was without Caleb Grill, and they almost beat Illinois without him, right? And so, yeah, like I think that's the thing. People are going to knock Missouri for the overall non-conference strength of schedule maybe, but if you look at what they've done, and I'm going to keep, and boy, this is about to be a theme here in a second, quality wins, right? Banking quality wins. At Florida, they have 2 top 5 wins now on the season, does Missouri. 2 top 5 wins. So they banked a group of wins that's as good as anybody's in the country in terms of if you want to just take. Right. A flat-out road win
at home
at Florida, who, by the way, as you know, has not been mentioned yet in these power rankings. So they're higher. So, I mean, that's a good pair of wins. Their losses are not bad. Auburn, Illinois, and Memphis. Are you kidding me? Memphis was to start the season. So I'm glad Chris brought that up, like to filter that all the way back to December 8th, because that also tells the story, I think, of where Missouri is. And you could even say, well, we had them lower than they should have been going into this past week, but now
they
they
were 51 exiting the Kansas game. The Kansas win bumped them up from 59 to 51. And then they're 50 after losing to Illinois on a neutral floor. Yeah, that's got to be it.
Missouri is 6th in the nation in bench minutes, 2nd in the nation in free throw rate, and 4th in the nation in defensive steal rate. They do 3 things, and they stick to them. They're going to come at you in waves. They're going to be aggressive nonstop and try to force contact, and they're going to be swiping at every single ball, forcing live ball turnovers, getting out and running. It's the recipe. It's what they're doing.
Blake, I got to hand it to you. I thought you were being a little aggressive pushing Missouri.
I was the
Max wanted to push him even higher. Yeah, listen, I like to take the credit for Missouri, but Max was pushing him even harder than I was this week. So, hey, I will hand unlike the Missouri basketball social media Twitter account, who's trying to give Chris Lee all the credit, it should be going to me and Max Barr right now. All right, but no, Max was pushing him further than I was. So, yeah.
Are we ready to move into the top 4?
Before we do that, a couple super chats. Quinn, $4.99. I don't remember who he was talking about earlier, but not if they face Auburn in the Sweet 16.
Ole Miss Elite 8. Lock it in.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I guess you have a point there.
Zach brought up $5 super chat. I think Tennessee would go as far as Chaz goes. Chaz start playing better. Yep, we've talked about that. And Sam Smith wants to fire Rick Barnes and hire Jerry Stackhouse. So there you go. All right. Anyways, so
Okay. Moving on up. Number four. You've got the Cats of Kentucky. Pope and the Cats coming off of a 97-102 home. Just an absolute treat to watch. I rewatched the highlights last night. Would watch them again today against Alabama. Before that, they'd beaten A&M at home, and that big Mississippi State went on the road. So past 3 games, bouncing off that Georgia loss. Nice little response here for the Cats.
Max, as you are the judge here, who was the high man on Kentucky this week?
I believe it was you, Blake.
Oh, Krusty. I was waiting. Krusty, you know you were waiting for that. I've been seeing all the comments. Krusty was waiting for me to admit that I was the high man on the Cats. And here's what we said a minute ago. And let it begin. All right? So, like, this is the conversation that's going to be had, right? So we can go ahead and bring up number 3, Max. We know who number 3 is. I mean, because I think the top 2 are probably pretty clear at this point. So it's Florida and Kentucky.
Let's group these 2 in.
Let's talk about these 2 teams, all right? I did rank Kentucky ahead of Florida, and I just think it's here's the common thing with all these teams. Keep this in mind now, all right, for everyone. And I know we're about to have the least biased discussion we've ever had, or the most biased discussion we've ever had, probably in the chat. But do we want to know now who the 4 of the top 5 offensive teams are in the country? Isn't it interesting? 4 of the top 5 offensive teams just happen to be our top 4 in the power rankings this week, right? Auburn, Alabama, Florida, Kentucky. 4 of the top 5 offensive teams out there. So the thing is, when you look at Kentucky's body of work, I know they lost by 5 to Alabama at home. I didn't really penalize them that much for that. But yes, losses have to matter. They got the win over A&M. They won at Mississippi State. Kentucky now has 6 quad 1 wins on the season. That is the second most in the SEC. They played 10 quad 1 games, so 6-4. And so I'm still riding high with the good wins. And a 5-point home loss to Alabama, I couldn't really knock them that much for that. And the thing is, too, though, if you want to, and I think this is where Chris may start to pick this apart. I always hate when that happens. Kentucky has been the best offensive team in SEC play. Kentucky has been the worst defensive team in SEC play. Now, the caveat I will add to that is Krusty a long time here, and I always love it because like every time I just see the photo, like it makes me laugh. So, so keep in mind too with Kentucky, they've played some of the best offensive teams in the league so far. So like, is that what's just driving the defensive numbers down? Is it just bad defense? Probably a combination at times of the two, but I don't know, Max. I keep going back to this, like with Kentucky, that they just the wins they banked are still so good, and it's like, can I really penalize them that much for a 5-point home loss to Alabama? I didn't, but that was just me in this one. So,
Chris.
Oh,
Chris is muted. Muted, I believe.
I did not.
Sorry,
do that,
the Oreo mute got me there. I think they're the hardest team in the league to rank because it is what's the ink blot, the Rorschach test or whatever, with the ink blot and somebody sees a dog and somebody sees a house or whatever. That's kind of what Kentucky is because like every single predictive computer ranking has got Florida 3 to 4 points higher than Kentucky on average. So if you believe in that, there you go. Case settled. If you believe in who they beat, again, I think Kentucky has got probably a top 5 in the country resume and probably pretty easily just in terms of big wins. Duke, neutral floor. Florida, A&M. Gonzaga's losing a little luster, but we got plenty of time for that. Still a tournament team. At Mississippi State, beat Louisville. That's 6 wins. I don't know that anybody's got a better 6 wins outside of Auburn than what Kentucky's got. Is that arbitrary? Yes. Can you find teams that have beaten 6 teams headed to the NCAA tournament much of anywhere outside the SEC? No, you can't. So my point is like, and I feel like whatever Kentucky does last, is where the pendulum swings on them. Like if they look awful and they lose to Ohio State like they did, which also looks worse now too, adding to the confusion, then you think, they're not very good. But the wins are what they are. I think the first in offense, last in defense just kind of summarizes it. That's wild.
Yeah, similar to how Blake feels better about Ole Miss moving forward after a road loss, despite the result being a loss. I felt better about Florida moving forward out of that 106-100 game at Kentucky, hanging with them when Kentucky goes 14 of 29 from three and only losing by 6 points. It's like, wow. A lot of teams would have gotten blown out in a game like that. And for Florida to only hang in within 6 when Kentucky is breaking records offensive efficiency wise, I really feel good about I really feel good about Florida moving forward. You lose by 1 point against Missouri at home. Should not have lost that game, but you did. So you do have that knock on them. But then also Kentucky loses a close one at home to Alabama, another really good team. So you can't really knock them either. For me, it really comes down to as simple as if these two teams played on a neutral court right now, I think Florida would be favored by a few points, and that's who I would probably take on a neutral court. I think these are two of the best offenses in the nation, but Florida's defense is a bit more consistent. So it's as simple as that. I don't really think there's a big gap at all.
Yeah. I mean, I just value the better wins for Kentucky. And I think that part of me too, like Missouri was in complete control of that game against Florida for at least a half or more, right? So I just, that was a little bit maybe jarring to me. But we knew Florida would always make the run, and they did.
Ryan says, I could say the same thing about Kentucky against Alabama. No, I can't, because Kentucky was at home. So completely different story.
Well, again, look, we're just I mean, here's the thing, right? Like, we're talking about teams that are very close together. So, yeah. And let's see, real quick, super chats quickly. $5 super chat, UK 5-1 against AP, top 15 teams. Yeah, I mean, they've got a lot of great wins. John C, $5. Won't let me send 4. It's cold. It's cold AF in Lexington. Hope Blake has a space heater going. It's going, and like I am over here. Like, you're gonna probably, if you go back and watch this in slow mo, like I am shaking physically right now. Not because of how mad I am that Florida's ranked above Kentucky, crusty, but I'm shaking because it's cold. So Blake with a $10 super chat. I think we should put this on a shirt. What do you think about this? I think we should put this quote on a shirt. But they don't play defense, Chris Lee. We should put that on a Southeastern 16 sponsored shirt. Listen, you know what I'm going to keep doing all year, and I'm going to keep just poking at this. Until Kentucky doesn't make the Final Four with a better ranked defense than Alabama had last year when they made the Final Four, I'm just going to keep saying, you know what? Kentucky's going to make the Final Four. Because Kentucky is still like 25 spots higher in Ken Palm's defensive efficiency metrics than Alabama was as a Final Four team last year. So just keep that in mind. All right? So, anyways.
I guarantee you, when we get to the Final Four this year, it may not be an SEC team, but I guarantee you one of those four is going to be like that
guaranteed
extreme difference between offense and defense.
If you tell me right now, right, if these are the top 4 in our power rankings, as we said, 4 of the top 5 offensive teams in the country, Auburn, Alabama, Florida, Kentucky, you're telling me right now that what are the chances, if you had to put a percentage on this, that one of these teams don't get to the Final Four? Like, I'm talking less than 10% chance. I think one of these 4 teams are absolutely getting there. Because I think they're so good offensively, and I know the defensive laws can be there. It's a game of matchups, but how do you stop these teams? Like, they've been that good this season. So,
pop quiz before I move up to number 2. How many teams did the SEC have in the round of 32 last year? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I don't remember.
3.
4.
The SEC only had 3 teams in the round of 32.
Oh yeah, and it was
It's gross. It was A&M, Alabama, and Tennessee. That's the only teams from the SEC that got out of the first round.
Yeah, that's right.
Better than that. Yeah. All right, moving on. Sorry, I had to get that in. It's tied at number 2. Alabama goes on the road to Rupp in a great game. Wins that one. Before that, dropped the home one to Ole Miss after they beat South Carolina and A&M on the road. Alabama, 4-1, number 2 in our power rankings.
Yeah. I mean, look, I would probably make the point too, like, how many other teams go in and win that game on Saturday in Lexington? You know, other than Alabama, just because of how
Not
well
many.
they played offensively. And I think that's the thing that I keep going back to that too, is, you know, I just think Alabama was so good on the offensive end, and that's where, like we said. But remember, they did just have their worst offensive performance, maybe the Nate Oates era, 5 days earlier, right, against Ole Miss. So it's like, what do you do here with these teams? And so, I mean, now, Max, we talked about this before the show. In our power rankings, let me make sure I got this right. Who were the teams that went 2-0 in the top 7 or 8 in our power rankings? Who went 2-0 this past week? It was Auburn and Missouri. Was that it?
That might have been it.
I think Auburn and Missouri were the only teams who went 2-0 in the top tier of our power rankings, right? Because it just, I mean, now again, it all runs together for me, so don't quote me on this, but Alabama lost a game. Florida lost a game. Kentucky lost a game. Tennessee lost. Who was
Ole
it?
Miss lost.
Ole Miss lost. Mississippi State lost. A&M lost.
Like, yeah, I think you're right. So I think you're right, yeah.
Georgia lost. I mean, like, so I think that's the deal, right? It's like everybody can say, well, it's so obvious you should rank them here or there. All these teams lost games except for Auburn and Missouri in this range. So, like, what do we do, right? Like, I mean, everybody lost. And so it was, yeah, as Kimmy says, Bizarro week. But, like, the Bizarro week is like the new norm in the SEC, where this is probably going to be the case the rest of the year. So that's just the way it works. So, yeah, Alabama, great win at Kentucky. We obviously have to factor in what happened on Tuesday, but still at the end of the day, if you look at Alabama's overall body of work, which we've talked about, I mean, Alabama's got 10 wins between Quad 1 and Quad 2 now. They're 10-3 in Quad 1, Quad 2. I mean, I'm looking at, like, who's next in that. Well, I mean, Auburn's at the top. They're 11-1. But Alabama, yeah, they're 10-3. Like, for reference, Kentucky is 7-4. Ole Miss is 7-3. Florida is 7-2. Tennessee's 6-2. Yeah. So, like, I mean, that's Alabama's body of work is still pretty remarkable, even with the Ole Miss loss earlier in the week last week.
Yeah, I think
Brian. This is it.
How
do
you
you rank teams that just keep beating up on each other?
Yes,
Brian.
yes.
Thank you.
Well,
like, how do you do it?
Pin that to the rankings. Like with the
We're gonna leave this on
the ticker.
Everything we do this week, we're just gonna screenshot this and just put it on every single thing. So yeah.
Assuming North Carolina would be in the NCAA tournament today, don't know if that still holds or not, but Alabama has now beaten 5 teams away from home that would probably be going to the tournament. And I think Houston, Illinois, A&M, Kentucky. I guess Illinois was in Birmingham, so that is away from home. But just for full disclosure, that's a little cheating there. But point is, they're winning a lot of games against NCAA caliber teams. In fact, 4 of those are probably top 4 seeds today, or close to, or the top 5 at least. Not a lot of people have done that. In fact, I would say probably outside of Auburn, nobody's done that.
Yeah, we were getting on Mark Sears big time early in the season. We were getting on him, and he has silenced us. Mark Sears is back to Mark Sears. He's into the top 10 nationally in the Ken Pom Player of the Year rankings. Out of the past 5 games, 3 of them he's gotten the individual MVP for. 20 points or more in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of the last 6 games. Sears is just on a tear right now, and Nelson's coming off his best game ever in Alabama. Finally starting to see the guys click. Finally starting to see it. Youngblood probably just had his best game as well. So, yeah, I think it's just a tip to the cap to Ole Miss as well. you got to be a damn good team to go in Alabama and win. So, yeah. Moving on up.
I mean, Alabama's got a Vanderbilt and LSU at home this week. Like, yeah. I'm telling you that the Tides record in about 2 weeks from now, like, home against Vanderbilt, home against LSU, at Mississippi State, home against Georgia, at Arkansas, at Texas. I mean, is there a game they're not going to be favored in there?
And they haven't even hit
Mississippi
their
State,
ceiling
I
yet.
think they'd probably still be favored. Yeah.
They're just getting there.
I mean, imagine this. Imagine if Alabama is 10-1 heading into February 15th in Tuscaloosa against the Auburn Tigers, not knowing what Auburn's record could be at that point. I know the Auburn fans are going to say, well, I know exactly what it's going to be. There are going to be 0 losses on there. But, oh my. But then, keep this in mind. This is tremendous. Alabama's final 7 games of SEC play. Are you ready for this? Enjoy it now, Alabama, because home against Auburn February 15th, at Missouri, home against Kentucky, home against Mississippi State, at Tennessee, home against Florida, at Auburn. A grind to finish league play. So
much like the schedule Alabama's already played.
That is also
Thank
true.
you,
Bill
Professor
Walton.
Lee.
Bill Walton. Okay, here we go.
Who's number 1?
Our number 1 that has been and continues to be
Here we go.
the Auburn Fighting Tigers. Auburn scared by Georgia without Broom, and honestly half the game without Cardwell as well. But Auburn continues to get things done. The only loss remains way back in early December at Duke. Auburn, whatever adjective, verb, noun, whatever word you want to throw at them, we've probably said it all. Guys, Auburn at number 1 again.
Yeah, I mean, just quickly for the Auburn fans, I know a lot of you now chiming in once we get to number 1 here, but we have said, Auburn fans, we got something pretty good coming for you this week on Wednesday or Thursday. We got something good coming for you. So you'll want to be subscribed to the channel for that. But, yeah, I mean, they just keep doing it. Like, I mean, yes, people are going to say, well, and I saw this earlier, well, Auburn's slipping a little bit. Well, it's nice to be slipping and still be 17-1 and 5-0 in the SEC. I get it. Like, well, they didn't win by enough points. If that's the argument we have for your team's doing okay. If the argument is, well, they didn't win by enough on the road. They won by 3 at South Carolina, won by 2 at Georgia. Shame on the Tigers for winning both those games. So, yeah, get a week off, which, like we said, I think there's a good part of the schedule with Broom out. We'll see how he continues to progress. They get Tennessee on Saturday. And remember, we're doing the watch-along Saturday night, Auburn, Tennessee, prime time. If you're a member, which 30 of you just became a member in this chat today via the gifted memberships from Blake. So, yeah, I mean, we're going to watch that game live, but come on. We all knew Auburn was going to be at 1. There's no reason to change it right now.
Look at this from EJ. Oh, where'd it go? There it is. EJ, noted Gator fan. How come the 1 year we're good, one team like Auburn has to be invincible? Shaking my head. That's funny.
Auburn has beaten – I don't think they're all going to get there. But Auburn has beaten 10 teams right now that could make the NCAA tournament.
That's nuts.
Guys, Auburn has 10 quad 1 wins. They've played 18 games. They have 10 quad 1 wins in 18 games. If they continue on this mark. Remember, if you look at the rest of their schedule, how many quad 1 games they have left? Well, I'm going to just quickly tell you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They still have 10 right now left to go in quad 1.
End up with 20.
Okay? Listen, if Auburn winds up with 20 quad 1 wins, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if they did, all right, they would be the greatest team in the history of the sport. All right? And we're not going to have any debate about that. 20 quad 1 wins potentially. Now, again, it's going to be hard to get to that 20, but, man, it's ridiculous. It is. Like, it's just nuts what they're doing. But still, get Broom back quick because, they're still pretty good without him, but they'd like to have him back on the floor, I think.
Blake, when Kansas just forever has these years where they have this staggering amount of quad one wins, what's the most Kansas ever got?
I have no idea.
Did you
120.
really expect Blake to know the Kansas quad
How are
one
you asking
record?
me?
Because he's Blake. He lives
I can
his
tell you,
stuff.
but Max will
Come on,
correct
bro.
me,
It's a shot in the
as he
dark.
did with my Ole Miss filibuster earlier. Max is going to correct me no matter what I say. Max is going to hold me to this number.
I don't know the quad one record.
can't be.
Sorry.
I would like to know because I think
All
we
right,
need to.
we're gonna sit here until you figure it
Auburn
out.
is on. Well, no, I mean, really not. The answer is not important because there's a long way. But my point is, we ought to be like whatever the record is for quad one wins. Auburn is probably going to be approaching that by the time we get to Selection Sunday. And
They're already
maybe
close
have
right
beaten
now,
it.
I would think. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, is it 17?
Somebody says the
brought up
record is 17. They could get there.
Not somebody. Bruce Pearl's Gucci bag says that the record is. Says that.
Will Bruce Pearl's Gucci bag be making an appearance this week on Southeastern 16? Tune in to find out. All right. Anyways. All right. Are we done here? Is that our power rankings? Wow.
That's our power rankings.
Incredible.
That hour just went by like nothing.
Yeah. By nothing. When you're trying to lie about teams and trying to move them up like we did in the group chat. Max is trying to do his thing for Missouri. I'm trying to do my thing for Ole Miss.
We're negotiating to move our teams.
We
up
are.
after
Like
the
you
votes are
should
in.
see. We should add that to the membership. Like you guys just watching us negotiate in real time in the group chat for our members. Like you would love the conversations we have once Max sends out the composite rankings every Sunday. Like I'm like, well, you know what? Hang on a second. What if I'm able to do this or that to get that team there?
It's like a mafia trying to
It's wild.
blackmail
Wow.
to get the votes right.
Hey, this is what we try to put into power rankings, which mean nothing, but we do our best to try to get these teams where they need to be at. So, all right, a couple more super chats, and don't worry, Sanders Logistics. People are freaking out. They'll be there. They're coming. It's okay, guys. They're not. You think I'd forget about Sanders Logistics? Come on. Blake with a super chat. Nice to be slipping and still winning. We'll put that on a shirt too. I like that. So, all right. And then we've got Danny, $5 super chat. All Auburn's quad 1 and quad 2 wins with Mississippi State have been, there you go. Great point too.
That's even crazier.
So they're pushing back at Chris. Chris is, we talked about it last year. It was like, what was the thing that stood out, right? We might have to bring that up this week. I'm just kidding.
Blake,
Yeah.
do you know anybody that could move me out of the program here in a hurry to get to the next thing?
No, I have no idea.
You sure?
I don't have a clue.
I don't either.
All right.
bad,
Well,
'cause
there's
could
power
use that
rankings.
right now.
I know what you're asking, Chris. You're asking about Sanders Logistics. Trust me, because anytime you want to be on the move, and let me tell you, well, okay. Chris said, I'm out of here. Sanders Logistics literally just like removed Chris from the stream. That's how quick they move.
That's how quick they do it.
We talk about efficient, hassle-free moving. Little did we know that the speed of light was also in the actual category of how fast they move people, because that's what Sanders Logistics does, as we know. Your trends and mine. And Max, if I could get the tab to load here, I would give you the entire read.
That would be nice. That would probably
Man,
be
is
ideal.
it really slow right now. But I'll tell you who's not slow. That's Sanders Logistics, formerly known as Ted R. Sanders Moving, a leader among moving companies in Nashville, Tennessee, and the surrounding area. Their team of professional movers are focused on delivering efficient, hassle-free moving for Chris Lee at an affordable price. Whether you're moving across town, moving somewhere where it's not 11 degrees in your garage, or across the country, Sanders Logistics has you covered. As always, you know where to visit them. Visit them at tedrsandersmoving.com. They will get you where you want to go. If you want to hop off the power rankings, you can do what Chris did. Quick call to Sanders Logistics. He's already out of here. And hopefully you guys are going about your day. They work fast. There you go. So, all right. What a day.
So
What a day.
I wanted to end with this. because I feel like everyone's got a great idea of the college football like season schedule, the NFL season schedule. Everyone knows it's week 1, it's week 4. Everyone knows college basketball. It's just a wash. There's no label on each week. Guys, college basketball, same exact thing as the NFL. It's an 18-week regular season. We just finished week 11, and we're entering week 12 right now. So just to put you in perspective at where we're at in the season, this is week 12 of an 18-week regular season. It's go time.
It's go time. Holly asked, when is the next live stream? Tomorrow morning. We'll do the game day stream. Yep. But today, later on, you will get predictions for Tuesday's game, which is not exactly a loaded slate on Tuesday. I think there's only, max 3 games? Is that right?
3 games. 3. Yeah.
Because remember, you've got like 4 or 5 teams with the midweek off. I think it's 4. But, yeah, so you'll get our predictions for Tuesday's games. You'll get those in a video here in a little bit, actually. We'll have those up in a couple hours. But, yeah, next live stream tomorrow. And, again, if you're an Auburn fan, if you're a Missouri fan, who knows? Other fans, you may be included this week. But we got some big things coming here at Southeastern 16. You'll definitely want to check out all videos, all live streams we do. You will want to be there for them. I'll tell you that. So there you go. We appreciate you guys, as always. I appreciate Max for putting together these numbers every week and holding me to my picks, even when I try to convince him otherwise. But it's what we do. We appreciate you guys chiming in on the power rankings. And, yeah, there you have it. So, all right. Thanks, as always, for watching. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the like button on your way out. Appreciate the super chats. We'll talk to you soon. Southeastern 16.